It was the 1930s. The United States was still suffering from the impacts of the Great Depression. Decades of poor land management, land overuse, and drought contributed to the worst crop failures the nation had ever seen. And then windstorms began kicking up eroded soil, dirt, and dust. The storms became more frequent. They became bigger, soon having an impact on whole swaths of the middle of the country. New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado. The farmers were fleeing in droves, desperate to escape the dust. This was the Dust Bowl. The federal response was slow and lackluster. In 1933, Congress established the Soil Erosion Service to combat the erosion that was fueling these storms. But within just 2 years, as dust storms more than tripled, the money was running out. The head of the Soil Erosion Service, Hugh Bennett, was desperate for greater federal government intervention. So in March of 1935, Mr. Bennett went to Washington, D.C. to give testimony to Congress about the consequences of the Dust Bowl. According to multiple accounts, Mr. Bennett's speech was well-timed. Just as he wrapped up his remarks, a massive dust storm from the Midwest reached Washington, D.C. A biographer of Bennett named Wellington Brink wrote about that day in 1935, quote, "Out of one corner of his eye, he noted the polite stifling of a yawn, but Hugh Bennett continued deliberately. Presently, one of the senators remarked, quote, 'It is getting dark. Perhaps a rainstorm is brewing.' Another ventured, 'Maybe it's dust.' 'I think you are correct,' Bennett agreed, Senator. 'It does look like dust.' The group gathered at a window. The dust storm for which Hugh Bennett had been waiting rolled in like a vast steel town pall, thick and repulsive. The skies took on a copper color. The sun went into hiding. The air became heavy with grit," end quote. Shortly after the Dust Bowl came to Washington, Congress passed the Soil Conservation Act unanimously. The act also established the Soil Conservation Service, which eventually became the National Resources Conservation Service, permanently housed within the U.S. Department of Agriculture. 90 years later, we're facing a different crisis. This summer, wildfire smoke has choked cities across the country week after week. Multiple heat waves are gripping massive swaths of the nation with no end in sight. In Texas, where the heat wave is entering its 5th week, emergency room visits for heat-related illnesses are surging. People are dying from the heat. And it's not new. Last year, Texas saw nearly 300 heat-related deaths. That number is likely an undercount. Last month, the heat wave made Texas one of the hottest places on Earth, rivaling the Sahara Desert. Energy demands in the state smashed records. Now, just 2 years ago, you'll remember, energy demands during a winter storm in Texas pushed the grid past its capacity. Blackouts during that storm led to nearly 250 deaths in freezing temperatures. So during this current heat wave, the key reason Texas was able to actually meet the demand, the increased demand, and avoid prolonged, potentially deadly blackouts? Green energy. Solar and wind power are credited with keeping Texans' AC running as these temperatures have soared. And while Texas has invested heavily in what is proving to be life-saving renewable energy, Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott is fighting those initiatives. When promoting a proposed tax incentive program for energy production in Texas earlier this year, Governor Abbott's big red line was that no renewable energy products be included because he wants to focus on dispatchable power, such as natural gas or coal. Right now, most of the country is grappling with various heat waves. Models from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration estimate that 20% of Americans in the contiguous United States will experience dangerous temperatures this week. The worst of it will be in the Southwest. Phoenix has already seen temperatures above 110 degrees for 8 consecutive days. And weather models show that temperatures surpassing 110 degrees every single day for the foreseeable future in Phoenix and other parts of the Southwest. If the forecast plays out as expected, this will be the worst and longest heat wave in America's history. We know that as a country and as a planet, we need to cut our emissions to try to limit the worst effects of climate change, but that's already happening. Last year, the Biden administration launched the first ever extreme heat response plan. It's a 10-point initiative to help the nation handle extreme heat waves. And as tens of millions of us will face this reality today and tomorrow and potentially all summer, we need the knowledge and the tools to protect ourselves and each other, because this is not an anomaly. This is our new normal.